Working in emerging tech and connected services is exciting but tough. You are working in an innovative, dynamic market with few clear models of success to follow. You need to make decisions more quickly than ever. There's more information and opinions out there from more sources than ever. Staffing is short, resources are constrained. At Parks Associates, it is our mission to serve the industry with evidence-based insights. We exist to serve you, and we can help. We inform your strategy with diverse perspectives so you see the whole picture. We research industry movement, the trends that matter, the shifting competitive landscape, and product innovations that will change the market. We also bring you the voice of the consumer. We survey tens of thousands of U.S. households every year with a data set that trends over decades, curating it for a deep understanding of consumer perspectives on emerging consumer technologies and services. We also bring you the voice of the channel. We survey and interview security dealers, small businesses, builders, property managers, and others to understand the channel and business customers' point of view. And your voice is so important. The experience and knowledge of the executives leading the industry are so valuable. You are in the trenches, and you can learn from each other. We bring the decision makers together in our executive conferences to make impactful connections, talk candidly about industry challenges, and inspire new solutions. We invite you to be our partner. You can learn with us through our research subscriptions. You can get custom data cuts quickly for product development, marketing decisions, and press releases. You can make inquiries of our analyst team when you want an outside opinion. You can assess new market opportunities and business concepts through custom research projects. You can host learning sessions for your team with our analyst workshops. You can add your voice to the conversation by joining us at our executive events. And you can help other industry leaders learn about you through our white papers and webinars. We are here to serve you. Be our partner.
Welcome to our first event in the 2024 Smart Spaces series. This executive conference caters to building executives and hardware, middleware, and software providers, enabling the next generation of consumer and property manager experiences in the MDU and hospitality environments. It's our second year hosting this conference series, following years of tracking the multifamily market in our research work. Today, we're going to be talking about technology and the impact of revenues, how the infusion of technology is enhancing the value of buildings and the services attached to them. I'm going to share a little bit of Parks Associates research to start, and then we will be welcoming Michelle McWilliams Tate from Toll Brothers to share more on how technology is transforming their business and the role of technology for the leasing side and the resident or the consumer. Finally, we have a panel discussion featuring SKBM Smart Technology, Groove Technology Solutions, Positron Access, and Point Central and Alarm.com company. I want to send a big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for their support. And if you're interested in getting involved, please get in touch with Ashton Gambrell on the Parks Associates team. Thank you to Cox Communities, NICE, Vantiva, Quickset, ADT, Calix, Homebase, and Dojo Networks. I'm Elizabeth Parks. I'm the president and CMO of Parks Associates, and we cover all aspects of connected devices, systems, and the services markets, with a very special focus on the consumer. We have a new study we're launching this year as a follow-up to our 2021 research. And so if you're interested in understanding the property manager and building owner perspective, please contact one of our team members. This new research will survey property managers and building owners about technology developments, adoption and views of different technology, and a special focus on connectivity, IoT devices, and services. This is a follow-up to our 2021 study, so we'll have some great trending data in there. Today, I want to start off and share a little bit more about internet as an amenity, the market size of the MDU and multifamily space, and some of the pain points that we are seeing in IoT strategies being deployed. Our past research and upcoming research focuses in on what property managers and building owners tell us about the IoT or the Internet of Things. These are the different devices and systems that are interconnected to create value through new services and more information that gets transferred or leveraged to provide new value from the integration of the systems. This is relevant for the operations side of the business for building owners and property managers, and also for the resident experience and the overall value. Ultimately, this is a huge opportunity for a lot of players. And these number of players make it a lot more complex. Currently, according to Parks Associates research, smart products and amenities have roughly 17% current penetration in the MDU market, with lower adoption of these products in apartments over condos. And this is part of our ongoing research that we're doing, and that was published in our most recent industry report, IoT and Automation in Multifamily Housing, Players and Market Growth, written by Kristen Hannick, Parks Associates Director of Research, who will also be moderating our panel session later this afternoon. Broadband is the foundation for all connected products and services to work, so it's important to acknowledge the reality of modern living and the dependence on the internet. Consumers need fast, reliable broadband speeds, and they expect it and they're willing to pay for it. You can see here from this chart that now 15% of all U.S. households have 1 gigabit speed of services, double the adoption of that speed in 2016. And now the vast majority of consumers reporting internet speeds of 100 megabits or higher for download. Remote work has also impacted this demand for internet. Our research shows that while full-time remote work decreased compared to 2022 levels, hybrid remote work is actually above where it was during the height of the pandemic. Currently, 41% of U.S. internet households have at least one remote worker in them. These remote working households, typically higher earning households, are also very desirable tenants for the MDU space as well, which are using broadband speeds and connectivity features to attract this group and to attract tenants overall. This includes offering different high speeds and reliable broadband as well as advanced amenities. From the property point of view, connectivity is a huge opportunity to add value directly, and this is really where bulk internet comes in. MDU properties can position bulk internet as an amenity, as a key enabler for other services, and as a profit center because of the property provided smart devices that could get attached to them. This is currently being debated by the FCC, where they could consider a ruling where there is the inability to offer bulk internet. This is very controversial, and we hear many industry players being vocal about why this is not a good idea. I think this is going to come up in some of the conversations we have later today. To share more on the size of the market, let's start with the type of housing people live in. We know that most are in single-family homes, but according to our research, about a third are in MDUs. That's about 34 million internet households out of 119 million that we're tracking. And we estimate the total addressable U.S. MDU market as having 29 million apartments and 10 million condominiums as of 2023. In addition, we see consumers reporting all sorts of issues around connectivity. The network being slow, coverage gaps, and difficulty connecting are all issues, but even more pronounced for apartment dwellers, where over half of apartment residents report some kind of network issue. And when we ask MDU residents what is most important to them when they're looking for their future home, connectivity is at the top of the list and in more than one ways. You can see from this chart some of the different property differentiators, including low-cost internet, choice in internet providers, internet available directly from the property, Wi-Fi hotspots, and even down further at the bottom, property-provided smart home devices, as well as EV charging access. In addition, renters want information, control, and communication, and access control systems and devices can provide this. Here's some of our research from our consumer survey work showing what renters value about access control, and this is from the view of somebody living in a high-rise, a low-rise, versus a single-family house. For the property, though, we see the top 5 smart safety and security use case solutions emerging at providing value and peace of mind for the resident, as well as the other operational benefits. And property owners and investors are responding with huge investments that are multi-purpose, like access control. They are both a resident amenity and an operational enhancement. These are solutions that increase attractiveness to prospective residents, making the property overall more competitive and also increasing resident ARPU through amenity fees or increased rental rates. These are also solutions that can lower the total cost of ownership and create lowered spending on things like utility or insurance, or indirectly through things such as increased employee productivity, reduced maintenance expenses, or reducing catastrophic events like floods or fires. We're seeing across the multifamily housing space and the adjacent industries an emphasis on certain technologies like Wi-Fi and networking, smart thermostats, smart locks, and access control systems, AI video cameras, as well as water leak detectors. These investments should pay off. Property managers and building owners tell us that the vast majority, 95% of them, say that smart home devices can increase rental fees by between 5 and 30%, but also look at other things like reducing energy, lower property insurance, and reducing the operating costs overall. This will become more important to reduce costs as costs are up for building owners and rents are down. The number of U.S. submarkets reporting apartment rent cuts continues to inch up month over month. In addition, there are reports that this is the year of the renter, with property managers working hard to try and fill vacant units. And as we see this transformation taking place, we continue to see properties encountering problems. There are 3 key pain points that property managers and building owners are telling us they run into. First, it's the need to prove and provide a return on investment. The second is to make sure that that change is worthwhile to overcome what already works or what people are currently doing. And lastly, solutions must be integrated and remove the complexity from operations, not add to it. Decision makers in multifamily housing are prioritizing IoT solutions with immediate ROI due to the rising cost and economic uncertainty. Challenges will continue in the retrofit market, creating necessary network infrastructure work and really emphasizing the need to provide that clear ROI and integration strategy for any new technology deployments. Resistance to change is also a huge barrier, and I know that Michelle will be sharing a little bit more about the requirements for people as well as technology. Finally, the biggest hurdle we see in the IoT journey for MDUs is fragmentation and integration across systems. Companies find best-of-breed point solutions manageable until they have to scale them. Staff are often juggling 4 to 15 different systems, which is cumbersome and requires all sorts of different logins and resident data input. The true power of IoT really lies in the data that it generates, which requires a seamless integration and access for analytics teams to be able to leverage. There is an incredible demand for a single sign-on capability for residents and the property owners to manage these different systems. We're going to continue to see companies making investments in this space and where those benefits will turn out. Throughout 2024, we'll see technology infused everywhere into the experience, but with property owners and building managers taking a more cautious approach when selecting solution providers. Thank you so much for listening today. If you're interested in any of Parks Associates' research or insights, please reach out to me or any of our team members. Next, I am excited to welcome Michelle McWilliams-Tate, National Director of Leasing for Toll Brothers, to join us. And so if you give us just a minute, we will be right back. Welcome back. I am so excited to introduce our next speaker representing Toll Brothers, Michelle McWilliams-Tate. She is a dynamic leader in the leasing industry, serving as the National Director for Toll Brothers, where she's helping to execute on a strategic vision and innovative approaches to drive an incredible experience for residents and the property manager. Toll Brothers is a 57-year-old company recognized for its luxury home building and holds a prominent position as a Fortune 500 company. The company serves first-time, move-up, empty nesters, active adults, and second home buyers, as well as urban and suburban renters, and builds in over 60 markets in 24 states. Michelle, we are so excited to have you join us today. Thanks for being here. How about we start off, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself and your role, and I'll let you share more about Toll Brothers as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here today, Elizabeth. It's an honor to be here. So Toll Brothers, my goodness, so thrilled to be a member of the Toll Brothers team. And I know most people do know Toll Brothers as the home builder. So Toll Brothers Apartment Living is one of the divisions of the Toll Homes Group. We love to incorporate our modern luxury living concepts into our rental communities all over the country. We do have conventional and student housing properties. I think it's important to mention on today's call that we are primarily and predominantly a merchant build, which means we're a short-term holder of the real estate projects that we have. And that will throw a slightly different perspective on the timing quotient of return on investment with any technology that we consider adding to the stack. And I think it's important to know that we're a very people-forward organization. So we will enter and engage the technology sector a little slower than many might expect, considering we have an innovation team, division, and technology leaders throughout the organization. So my role here with Toll as the National Director of Leasing, I've been here for 3 years, but I've been partners with some of the leadership for over 20 years, and my experience expands over 3 decades. So yes, I once typed up availability reports, and today we have this amazing technology where we can print them out and hit the ground running first thing in the morning. Have worked through many different situations across the country in student, rental, home ownership, and built a consulting firm from the ground up, Sales Velocity, which ran for 10 years, and also is the founding partner of a growing property management firm here in Pennsylvania. Again, really proud and happy to be here and hoping to share some insights that will resonate, as I think that some of our philosophies are aligned to a majority of the property managers and firms that you're going to find out there today.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Michelle, thanks for joining us. I know we talked in our prep call some of the things that we're going to focus in on: the business of leasing, the new requirements for people and technology, and some of the pain points that property owners and building managers are going through as they look to leverage technology really throughout the process, from the leasing side to operations. So let's start off and see if you can share just a little bit. And I love the history that you're bringing here to the conversation. You're a few decades where you've really been able to see technology come online, and then how that's impacting the market as it moves forward. Can you maybe describe a little bit as far as the past decade and then the past few years as well, since we certainly had a number of changes with the pandemic and how everybody operated?
Absolutely. So it's quite exciting to see how much advancement has come over the 3 decades, let alone the past 10 years, really accelerated, right? So some of the things that I've seen really come center stage are digital marketing enhancements and initiatives relative to guerrilla marketing tactics that we once ran through. Today, I'm seeing a little bit more of a hybrid come through, and watching our teams trying to understand and identify from both angles is part of the learning challenge that we have seen come into play, as well as with the pandemic, the whole DIY concept, self-guided tours, self-booking, self-entering any service tickets, all of that really coming to light through the pandemic has taken center stage. Of course, we know that. And then the Great Resignation, that added another element to it. So with the whole DIY approach, let's just say self-guided tours, that became something that was a standard during the pandemic. And then with the Great Resignation became a point where we could really pilot and streamline and test that area a little bit more. Again, saying this as a people-forward organization, we believe that people and that our talent will always provide a better experience than the technology will, but we found ourselves in a position where we were creatively working with the technology to put that center stage and try to maintain the same brand and experience as you would expect from a Toll community.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen technology shift operations as a result of the pandemic. Certainly, things like remote support. We've seen in the home security world just the ability to help consumers if they're having trouble remotely, and that those systems and processes really got built out during the pandemic, which ultimately is serving people well, even though during the time it was an incredible shift. Let's talk a little bit about some of the general barriers for a real estate company when you're considering technology. You know, what are some of the challenges that pop up, especially in today's world where you might be inundated with new solution providers, you know, pitching the next best thing that will save you money or time or get you more leases accomplished?
Absolutely. So yes, that slide really resonated with me, Elizabeth. By the way, in your presentation today, we certainly do have a lot of different platforms as opportunity and different professionals coming to us with solutions. I think it's really important, and I will share that Toll as an organization, we take a step back and really try to identify the friction points or the pain points. You know, can we pull 1, 2, 3 max pain points that we can try to work through and consider technology as the plug-in to help us get to the finish line and achieve greater ROI and even saving expenses. What we're finding along the way is we may have a marketing team, as an example, that is very excited about a product, or even me, excited about adding a layer or an element to really enhance the experience and support a team, let's say a short staff team. What we find when we get there is the technology, even on a newer community, may not be completely set up or designed to support the technology that we're putting in place. Beyond that, also the practicality of those platforms communicating with one another. And the biggest challenge of all, who is responsible? Who are we putting in charge of making sure that the platforms are communicating and getting everything back online if there is a falter of any type out on the front line? So I know, Elizabeth, when we spoke at one point in time, just to give an experience, a pain point that we have found is turning on our keyless entry and a self-guided touring experience where those platforms are communicating, and we have a guest, a prospect, leaving the fitness center, turning down the hall to head to the model, and finding a dead zone in the internet, and they drop off, and they find that they may not be able to find their way to the next spot as an experience. So yes, some of the barriers are really just testing again. And number one, first and foremost, is education and getting your learning and development team on early on in the process to make sure that we're helping our teams at every level and every stage of the process understand what it means, what the KPIs are, and how to keep our platforms running and operating smoothly for a positive experience.
Yeah, all really good points. And it's interesting just how important this foundation of connectivity becomes when you're talking about different systems, especially being connected, and then, some kind of user interface connecting somebody with that experience at the end. When we think about the people requirements within, let's say, leasing apartments or condos, you know, they're as much as you want to, anybody might want to add technology to enhance that or save money or create a better experience, there still really is a requirement of people in the property manager arena, in the sense of getting residents, you know, through the process to ultimately to getting a lease done. So can you share a little bit more about some of the mindset perhaps of the staff for property managers and the things that they want to have? You know, what are the necessary things that they really have to have? And if the technology doesn't do this, there's no way they would even consider it or look at it.
Right. That's a great question, Elizabeth. So what I'm finding post-pandemic is a lot of our frontline teams are really starting to resist technology that is DIY related. So any self-guided, self-booking, they really want to get back to who they were pre-pandemic. So that's part of the resistance that we're seeing out there. And they're finding simplicity in that because there are fewer hurdles. That's definitely a piece of it. As far as what they really want and crave in technology, they're more basic elements. So where, some of our team will sit down and we'll say, hey, how do we automate the process that someone can get from lead to lease on their own and feel like they're truly experiencing Toll Brothers? If we turn around and ask the frontline teams what they really want, they want to be business managers again. And unfortunately, what they're turning into is parking attendants and package managers. So despite all of the technology that we have out there with the locker systems and systems that we have for parking and maybe having enough or not quite, ample parking for the resident base there, a lot of our property managers and teams are asking for more lockers, better storage locker opportunity, and they're looking for technology solutions for their parking and their EV. So how can we better manage these spaces and keep them occupied and grow our revenue? At the end of the day, I think that there's simple asks of us to support them along the way. And there is a solid revenue stream in those very simple areas.
Yeah, and now technology, while it could make things more cumbersome in some instances, and of course that's a call to the industry, making these solutions to keep it simple, make sure it works, keep the integration as easy as possible. There still is that component where the human being is of critical importance, and that the resident may even want to deal with a human rather than some kind of system. At the same time, you've got those leasing agents who really want to be able to talk to somebody who has a strong interest in the property instead of, quote, wasting their time perhaps on somebody uninterested. So can you talk a little bit more about the self-guided tours and how these may play a role in weeding out perhaps some of the people who really wouldn't be interested in a specific property for whatever reason?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really interesting to see. I'm actually going to answer this twofold. One part of this is having chatbots and or self-booked tours. What we found when we activated this, because PS, not all leasing professionals love answering the telephone today. So let's be honest, they're not really enthusiastic about answering the phone. They don't want the technology. They don't want to answer the phone. We engaged the chatbot system at several locations. And what we found was in the consistency of that, we had an increase of lead to tour by 14% in those communities. So adding the technology really did support them. And in this second phase of what we're going to talk about, which is the self-guided tour, is really starting to push the leasing professional more into their zone and their role. What do I mean by that? Well, fortunately and unfortunately, again, I've had the pleasure of showing apartments back during a time where we didn't really have this experiential process. It wasn't as much relationship building as it was being a tour guide. And so I was taught as a very young leasing professional, when someone showed up, to point to the model, send our clients there, let them take a look around and come back to let us know if this looks like something that suits them. And then we would begin to engage. So taking that into consideration, if you look at a self-guided tour, what we're finding here is similar. We can create more experience around it. However, we're finding that our clients that do opt into the self-guided tour and are redirected to self-guided tours because we're booked, they have a chance to really immerse themselves in the product and the lifestyle of the resident without someone communicating with them along the way. So they're really seeing it through their eyes and their lens. They're coming back with true questions and conversation. And we're finding that our teams have more authentic, meaningful sales conversations on the other end when our prospects take the first round of touring on their own. So they're really immersing themselves and then they're talking with us about it. Yeah. And it's not a one size fits all. It may be different at every community depending on the size of the team and the availability. But our teams absolutely love taking what would normally be a return visit or dubbed as a be-back tour. Is the secondary part of the tour happens at that same time. So there's the self-guided tour and then we're present. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and maybe then shortening the time frame even for that decision-making process that somebody might be going through.
Yes.
Technology also, I mean, in the process of just viewing an apartment or a property to make that decision comes into play, but also we're seeing technology infused in unit, where we're seeing smart devices add to the in-unit experience, but also the amenities outside, like a gym having Wi-Fi or the pool that you could print to your apartment while you're out working, work at home at the pool. So can you share a little bit more about how connectivity is playing a role as far as differentiating property for that resident making a decision? How important is it to have Wi-Fi that works and to have a property that has Wi-Fi points across it so you don't have dead zones?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the connectivity, of course, is essential, and I know you're seeing this in all the statistics that are coming through. I'm seeing it in our service tickets coming through as one of the top 10 concerns transmitted to the team. You know, how do we resolve some sort of connectivity challenge or issue? More so at the beginning of a project versus later on, because we wind up, fine tuning and determining how we can resolve some of those issues. But it's super critical. We have a lot of people who are coming in, they're working from home, they're streaming, they're gaming. We know all of these things, yet somehow we are still finding ourselves opening up a project and finding that we have these dead zones and we're having to create some workarounds. So I will share that we have been active as we open communities, putting our best foot forward to make sure that connectivity is at 100% capacity before we open, but we also have backup tools on us just in case so that we're able to support our leasing initiatives as well as our residents.
Okay, great. And we're also hearing a lot specifically about access control systems. And is there a little bit more you might be able to share about smart door locks and or just access into any kind of community and how that's working? Are there apps that are being used? Is it keyless entry? And of course, I know different communities vary, so feel free to share whatever you'd like on that.
Yes, thank you. We still run the gamut a little on the entry point, but for the most part, we are moving forward with keyless entry. And I will share some of the human factor that we're finding out on the front line with so much management of the technology and our teams not really understanding the how or why and timing behind the technology. We find some interesting behavioral patterns, such as leaving the front door propped open during office hours because there is a concern or fear that that a prospect won't be able to gain access into the building. Propping a door open to a package room because of complaints that came through with having access control challenges. So, I think that on this call, we can all, determine that there are some easier solutions for these things. But again, I'm going to go back to the people quotient. If our front line does not become the evangelist user of the technology, it's never going to work through and trickle through to our residents. So everything that we're saying and doing, it's really important that we're super efficient and over-educating, over-communicating with our frontline teams so that they're drinking the punch and they want to participate in this and promote it as much as we're wanting them to, so that we see the return on investment.
And are you seeing, as far as that education and training process, is there any one thing that you think works the best for those property managers? And then also, could you speak towards the turnover and just the position with some of these leasing agents and the property managers and how long they might be staying or not staying, perhaps in a role?
Yeah, I'd love to report to you today, Elizabeth, that we have perfected the system of educating all layers within the organization on the technology front, but we are still very much a work in progress as things progress. But just a point in case. So as a leader in the organization who is pushing the technology, who once picked up an iPod for the first time and wanted to know how one singular button was going to rewind and fast forward, right? As now coaching and working with the front line, who's usually teaching me how to use some of my devices. So that thought process in mind, how do we go about our coaching and our educational process so that we are designing it, I hate to use this term, but designing it for the weakest link to make sure that the absorption and knowledge transfer happens all the way through, and really ensuring that every stakeholder has buy-in, because one stakeholder will be the stop in the entire process. And then back to your other question, I'm sad to report and proud to report that during the Great Resignation, we had one particular community, a 6-person asset, down to one leasing professional in the middle of leasing season in a very, very strong market. There was a surge in interest. And so we relied on technology to solve the challenge. And that's getting back to what I was talking about earlier. The pandemic carved the way for DIY, and then the Great Resignation allowed us to really test the water to see if this would work. And it actually did work at this community. We did not miss a beat having one person on site. It's not sustainable. So please know that is not the message to operate a community of that size with one individual, but it did keep us going for 3 months while we restaffed and restructured, and they continue to use the product today to maximize their efforts.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting how technology can impact those resources that are available and provide great support when you need it, when you don't have any humans. I do have a question from the audience. Let me see. How does internet as an amenity from the property manager answer the challenge that residents should have a choice of internet providers? And so I think this is getting a little to the bulk internet,
Yes.
controversy.
So let me get my salesperson's hat on. Here we go. So that's a great question. And we are asked that question often. And I will say, one of the things that we discuss on our leasing calls as to how to work with our leads on this is we take our role in management very seriously. And we like to have the responsibility of taking care of your full residential experience here. And so if you're subscribing with the provider that we've partnered with on your behalf, you have double support. You can always come to me. We're here for you. And we are just, we're even more motivated to help you get to the finish line if you have any challenge or any need. So we see it and try to position it as strength versus forcing someone to make a decision on the one provider.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of companies that probably have a similar view to you, and that ultimately it may be serving the consumer really well to bake the internet into that cost, particularly the lower income communities. And so a lot of interesting conversations around that topic now. And I know Kristen's going to address that with some of our panelists in the next session. I have another question from the audience. When it comes to managing the risk to roll out technology, do you have a test run where you're doing pilot projects or a certain number of units as a trial? Also, could you speak to retrofitting versus replacing hardware entirely? That could take you days.
Oh my goodness. All right. I will do my best to keep it short and sweet. Okay. So as far as test driving, yes, to the nth degree. So we have a full team. We have a digital team. I call them the Mavericks of Measurement. They're amazing. They will go through test split processes with any products, software, any platform that we're engaging. And we will typically select 3 apartment communities in varying regions and sizes and status to see how they operate. Because as I mentioned earlier, we're not finding that there's a solution that's a one size fits all. So we try to validate and see how we might make it work across the portfolio. So we do go through that process. And I know that we're running short on time. So as far as retrofitting is concerned, we are a short-term holder on our projects. So the idea is to sell them within the year. But we do, due to the economic conditions, have some that we are changing over and retrofitting right now, some locks. And that's been an interesting scenario. But I will say that our residents have welcomed the retrofit with open arms. They've been very positive about it.
And as one more follow-up quickly to that, that decision-making process about, who do we choose, who do we use for our new locks everywhere? Does that take a long time to come about?
Yes.
Decisions there?
We take our time because what we've learned over time is the faster that we make the decision, the more challenges that we're experiencing. We find simple things such as KPIs and being able to track some of our internal metrics for conversion that are really important to us. So we like to take a lot of time and involve stakeholders from each and every grouping and division, and from the front line all the way up to the C-suite. So we will really navigate through an interview process, if you will, sometimes for months before we'll consider piloting on a project.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. It's such a large investment, and then the implications once those final decisions are made when you roll it out to scale. So very interesting. Michelle, it's amazing how quickly 30 minutes will go by, but I do want to give you the opportunity and really a call to the industry. You know, our audience is made up of technology solution providers, service providers, people who are developing AI to put into hardware and new applications. You know, what would you tell these different groups building the technology of tomorrow, you know, with all the experience you have in the space?
Absolutely. I have a few key points here I'd like to share. And one of them is our strongest partnerships are those partners that come to the community that we're considering the pilot on, and getting to know the team and getting to know the project so that they're part of the solution. So really taking ownership in the outcome and not just the launch of the product. I would say, yeah, and that includes just knowing who the end user is, because sometimes the product is smart, so smart, but not necessarily intuitive to the person on the other side who may not be as motivated to use the technology. They're more people forward. Just a few other things is, you know, make sure that when we're designing, that we're designing for that end user. And that end user in a lot of these cases in property management is not someone who is driven to sit behind a computer. They're up and about and moving around. Helping our teams understand whether the connectivity is right for the product that you're offering, and helping us identify the solution, because we want to partner with you, but we don't always know how to work through that solution on connectivity. Defining integration is another one that from a KPI and reporting perspective, we have found a few times that we've partnered up and did not have the reporting and the metrics that we needed to actually validate the continuance of the relationship. And last and certainly not least, I want to say thank you to all of you in the audience, all of our technology supporters and providers, because I know that we can be hard to work with, but we want to work with you, and we appreciate all of that you're bringing to us to make our jobs easier every day. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you really touched on so many things, you know, the role of technology, customization, the issues with staffing, education, the responsibility that the leasing has to the resident, the responsibility of the technology providers to the companies who are buying those products. And so we really appreciate you taking the time and being here to join us today. So thank you again, Michelle.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, and we have another session coming up here shortly, PropTech revenue and ROI. And so we will be back in just a minute. Thank you again for joining us. We love feedback, so please be sure to put any comments in the chat. And if you have questions for our panelists, feel free to add them in, and Kristen will bring them into the conversation. Thank you again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion for today's Smart Spaces event on the subject of PropTech of revenue and ROI. If you haven't met me before, I'm Kristen Hannick, Research Director here at Parks Associates. I lead our coverage of the MDU space and multifamily housing, as well as broadband and overall connectivity. I'm going to be the moderator for today's discussion. We have a great lineup of panelists here with us today, including Chris Kimbrough, EVP of Sales and Marketing at SKBM SmartTech, Lance Platt, President and CEO of Groove Technology Solutions, Pierre Trudeau, President and CEO of Positron Access Solutions, and Nate Wyzik, GM of Point Central. Before we get to the meat of the discussion, let's do a round of introductions. Chris, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and a little bit about SKBM?
Sure thing. I am Chris Kimbrough with SKBM Smart Technology. SKBM, so my background is in multifamily. Well, most recently, my background's in multifamily. I worked for Greystar. Before that, I worked for CBRE, so in commercial real estate, the whole time doing, looking at PropTech, smart building technologies, and talking to clients about technology strategies, not deploying tech just for tech's sake. SKBM Smart Technology has installed over 400,000 units of smart home and over 3,000 properties of access controls in the lower 48. Really happy to be working for this company and helping them build out their one-stop PropTech. Can't talk today. PropTech service for multifamily. So we are engaged with smart apartments and Wi-Fi, access controls, everything that's on the screen here. We have strategic partnerships that allow us to deploy these things, and we are by far the best installers in the business. So we've got the knowledge and we've got the boots on the ground.
And we're very happy to have you here with us today, Chris, kind of both bringing in that knowledge and expertise from Greystar, as well as all that great kind of expertise with SKBM and what's going on in that space as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, my pleasure to introduce Lance Platt, President and CEO of Groove Technology Solutions. Lance, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and about what you do for Groove?
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. So yeah, been in the space a little over 17 years now, I guess. Groove is a systems integrator, technology integrator focused really around the hospitality industry, and now much more so in the multifamily and residential family industry. You can see here that we support a number of technologies and variety of different systems that we design, install, support, and happy to be here today.
We're very happy to have you here with us today, Lance. All right. Next, we also have here with us today Pierre Trudeau, President and CTO of Positron Access. So really bringing in a lot of knowledge around the broadband space. Pierre, I think you might have a slight problem with your audio.
Sorry, this should be better.
No worries.
So thank you for having me on this panel, along with some other great participants. Positron is the company that enables the connectivity inside these legacy or brownfield MDUs. So we provide the gigabit Ethernet backbone in the MDU over the legacy wiring. So your good old telephone pairs of coax can deliver gigabit Ethernet to every unit, every apartments. And we do that by seamlessly expanding or extending the fiber feed into the building. So being nice to the service provider, but also providing the right easy connectivity that allows for managed Wi-Fi to also take place. So we're the guys in between that are hidden in the walls and ceilings and giving you a gigabit without having to break anything in the building. No rework.
Yes, and connectivity, I think, is absolutely vital to this transformation that so many companies and so many properties are really going through today. It's essential as a resident amenity, and also essential for making these dreams of kind of smart technology transformation actually be successful.
Indeed.
Very happy to have you here with us today. Next, pleasure to introduce Nate Wyzek, General Manager of Point Central. Nate, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kristen and Parks team. So Nate Wyzek, General Manager of Point Central. I have been with Point Central for 6 years, but I've actually been with our parent company, Alarm.com, for I've lost track of the total years. It's over 13 at this point. But ultimately, Point Central is a wholly owned subsidiary of Alarm.com, focused on providing smart property technology solutions to residential rental owners and operators. Ultimately, our aim is to help them improve operational efficiencies and facilitate sort of stronger connections between the owners, operators, and their residents. We are built on top of or within the Alarm.com platform that serves over 9 million subscriber properties worldwide and is supported by around 1,900 employees. We focus at Point Central on the enterprise and resident level management and automation of a broad range of IoT devices. So I won't enumerate all of the devices that we bring in. We've got some of those on the slide as far as how we categorize and think about the areas of application. And then important to note is that we also provide our technology through a vetted network of service provider partners that can serve properties at a local, regional, and national level.
Yes, so very, very happy to kind of hear your expertise on this, Nate, and kind of see what you're seeing in this market. All right. Well, yes, thank you all so very much for joining us here today. So I'm very much looking forward to diving into this discussion and really hearing what you folks have to say about these. So we've seen, as Elizabeth mentioned, and kind of during our earlier keynote, there has been an absolute ton of movement in the space in the last few years. So many companies have these fairly kind of in-depth plans for modernizing their businesses, moving forward with connectivity and managed Wi-Fi solutions, all these different smart property technology solutions. But of course, there's a little bit of a changing market as well. We've seen some higher interest rates happen, some different priorities potentially among companies. And we're hearing that there's more than ever a focus on ROI and solutions that really help to drive that ROI. So my question to you, and maybe let's direct this to Chris first, since she's coming in kind of from both sides of this. So what are owners and operators really looking for today when it comes to deploying smart building technology? And by smart building technology, I mean kind of both this operational types of solutions as well as maybe some of these resident-facing amenities.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're really looking they are looking for ROI. Like I have talked to clients who've said, don't bring me any technology that doesn't have ROI. I will say though, that I think that one of the things that technology firms in multifamily are struggling through right now is kind of what counts as ROI. We have a lot of data that we gather, through the deployment of different technologies. And I think we're not quite at the point where we're using that data appropriately. So you look at a lot of smart home providers say, oh, the ROI is you can charge a tech amenity fee. Well, as we all know, there's not a lot of appetite for charging additional fees right now. So what I have been looking at is, and I think honestly, Elizabeth and Michelle couldn't have given us a better, lead into this panel. But I mean, what I'm trying to get, and we're working with you on this, is what I'm trying to get is do we have actual evidence for some of the benefits of smart building that we all talk about? Because I hear about them, they're all anecdotal, but like, do we have actual, is smart home or, access controls and increasing tenant retention? Is it driving down churn in property staff? Two huge problems. Are there ways that, deploying risk mitigation technologies impact the incredibly high cost of insurance right now? So I think that, yes, everybody's looking for ROI, but I think the way that I think there are probably more nuanced ways that we can start communicating what the ROI is, other than a tech amenity fee, and really showing owner operators in this market where there's not a lot of appetite to, spend $1 million on technology to show them, it's not just about revenue. It is about all of these cost savings and these operational efficiencies. That's what they're looking for. They're looking to solve real estate problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's potentially many, many drivers for this, kind of beyond you can charge X number of dollars per month as this amenity fee.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of drivers, and I've been having tons of conversations around this point. I was just on a call earlier this morning where we were talking about it. Yeah, I just think, and I'm not saying I'm not saying the providers out there now don't do it. I just think that I think there's a change here in how we have to communicate the value of smart building.
Yes, and then Lance, so I know Groove is coming in kind of from the side. You've done a lot of work in hospitality. I'm sure there's been kind of some additional research there that has kind of different statistics and metrics that folks can look at to kind of get an idea of what the impact could be in multifamily housing.
Well, it's such a good point, Kristen. Yeah, it's a very different dynamic in the two industries. In hospitality, it's a very mature environment where technology has matured in a way to where the opportunity for savings is really to drive cost out of the existing technology. When you look at MDU today, there's a lot of greenfield opportunity with technology, and I think, as Chris pointed out, there's a lot of providers that are looking to technology to solve individual problems. It might be around smart building where you're looking for efficiency or additional revenue source or whatever the case is. But if you look across the board, you look at where and how technology is being used. And one of the real challenges that exists in MDU is that there aren't standards that have really been established to build on as it relates to introducing new technology into the space. And so there's a lot of disparate technologies that are coming in, and as they come in, each of these technology providers often want that connection to the end user. They want the revenue source, but they want the experience with that end user. And one of the challenges you have is, Chris was moving down this path of kind of fee fatigue with all of the different fees that are coming in with technology, but then there's kind of app fatigue as well. How do you interface with all the different technology? And there hasn't been historically a solution that really says, what is the long-term strategy? What are the standards in the industry? How does technology get introduced? How does it get managed? And what is the interface level with it? And so I think we're on the precipice right now within multifamily of what will really evolve over the next few years, especially as the industry begins to mature from a technology perspective, and a lot of these technologies come in and point towards a more common solution that wraps those together. And so I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to, a lot of these technologies are being introduced individually to solve individual problems, creating a disparate kind of environment. And it creates challenges of how do you ultimately interface with technology, and what do you use to ultimately manage all the technologies that are in place.
Yes, and it becomes hard to measure also as well when you have all these separate point solutions, and there's maybe data silos and kind of a lack of integration. And well, Nate, actually, I'm kind of curious to hear your perspective here as well. So Point Central, you guys have this kind of smart building platform, also kind of a lot of interfacing with access control, which for a lot of companies has been the point of the sphere when it comes to deploying some of these new operational technologies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, building on what we've been talking about, I mean, we all know it's about, we'll say ROI, but I'll go to just say NOI. I like NOI because it's a very simple arithmetic equation. It's you have revenue and cost, and if you can affect one of them in the correct direction, then you've got an improvement in your NOI. I think though it's more complicated than that. Chris was kind of spot on. I think if we rewound 3 years, it was pretty easy for 3, 4, 5 years even. Pretty easy for people to say, look, I'm just going to justify this on the top line by increasing rent or adding a fee. The reality is that's not the environment we're in today, and we've been telling people all along, like, probably not a great idea if you're your decision to purchase any technology, whether it's ours or any, is solely predicated on the concept of top line lift or monetizing it through a fee. I will say though, so if you get into the operational piece of that equation, there are, to Chris's point, like anecdotal information and evidence out there, but systematic data that benchmarks across the entire industry to say, here's the concrete savings that you're going to have is difficult. And I would argue actually it really is building dependent. So I look at ROI, when I kind of go back to that phrase or three letters, as both a quantitative and a qualitative metric. That is not to say that the decisions should be made on a wholly qualitative basis, but what we've also seen is, some products and services address baseline needs, like think Maslow's hierarchy for safety and security. Access control or a door lock kind of has to be there. And so, yes, does it have to be a digital door lock? Does it have to be a fob-based access control or pin-based access control of the perimeter, an intercom solution? I think it's a little bit TBD, but when you blend that with what I would call a modern resident expectation, you start to see that some companies are making a bet. Bet's maybe the wrong word for it, but I think it's the correct hypothesis that says, like, at some point, all of this becomes table stakes for the demographic that is going to be your average renter. And so balancing both the quantifiable and qualitative aspects of this ROI, I think are important to consider together.
Yes, I think absolutely. And then, of course, there is another factor here, and that is in all of these kind of different buildings and properties and kind of structures, you need to have connectivity in order for a lot of these solutions to work. So, of course, that is a factor, whether it's a new build and you can kind of put that in from the start, or you're actually retrofitting and kind of making it work that way. And PR, this is really where Positron sits. So I guess my question here to you, where do you see kind of among your multifamily clients, how are they thinking about kind of these networks that they're installing in buildings? Are they looking at them kind of first and foremost as this amenity for residents? So being able to bring in this really great kind of reliable high-speed internet. Are they also looking at kind of this additional factor, which is, okay, how can I make these networks really work around my property?
They start with really delivering basic internet access. And that means that they have a limited budget and they want to get the most out of it. And our customers, we tell them, if you rewire, it's going to cost you X. If you reuse the wiring and you're good then for 10 plus years, it's going to cost you about 25% of what you would have spent otherwise. So that gets their interest. And then they say, and we do this without having to bring any construction crew. We don't open the walls. We don't make any mess. We just reuse what's in place already, whether it's telephone pairs or coax. And by saving them dollars and not having to break open anything, we make it easy for them. And then they provide internet access where really the internet experience is predicated on Wi-Fi. So the old MDU Wi-Fi is still in its infancy. It's one thing to do it in an enterprise. Doing it in an MDU is far more complex. And we're working with the leading Wi-Fi vendors to get that, I guess, improved. But there's already good enough connectivity now that you satisfy that first need, going back to Maslow's pyramid. Then they know that they have a network in place that allows them to dabble in the smart MDU apps and hardware, smart locks access, and so on. And then it's up to them to decide when they do it and what do they start with. But at least we give them the basic infrastructure that they're ready to engage on that front when they're ready.
Yes, and kind of, I imagine reusing the existing wires really helps to kind of radically change that question around investment and around kind of how much this is going to cost to bring everything really together.
Exactly. It changes the equation, and then it changes how they work either with an MSP, like Groove, for instance, or whether they work with the traditional service provider that provides the whole service.
Maybe to add on to that, we're big fans of Positron and what they do. There's not just a financial component to it, but there's very much of the ability to minimize the disruption out there. So, when was the last time you went to a hotel and didn't have access to Wi-Fi? It just doesn't exist, right? You wouldn't stay at that hotel today. And that's the element of maturity that I was speaking about with a lot of this technology. It's there, it's in place, it's operating. really in a hospitality environment, you're looking at simply upgrading to the next generation of Wi-Fi. But when you look at a lot of these MDU spaces, be it residential MDU or senior living or student housing, as Pierre mentioned, Wi-Fi solutions at the PropTech level are very much in their infancy. And there's a recognition that there needs to be more enterprise level solutions in these spaces that don't exist today. Positron really facilitates that solution because there's a lot of these buildings are very old buildings. They hadn't considered or contemplated the idea of future, property-wide Wi-Fi solutions, community Wi-Fi solutions. And now you're having to enter that space and really manage around not only the cost of bringing all the wiring in, but the disruption is significant. You think about a senior living environment, the idea that you're going to run right down the hallway and into the rooms and tear open ceilings and pull wires in there and put access points. It really can't be overstated, the value of being able to go in and minimize that disruption, minimize the cost, and deliver a solution that ultimately gets the technology there. So Positron is really kind of right time, right place with what's happening in MDU and in relation to a lot of the core kind of managed services solutions, meaning voice, video, data into that environment. There are other ways to bring technologies to play there that might relate, but I think a lot of these buildings have contemplated, as Nate mentioned, the idea of safety and security, right? You've contemplated an access control, maybe even a video surveillance because technology's been there for a long time. But a lot of them haven't contemplated the idea of bringing a future managed Wi-Fi solution to the table. And so figuring out how to do that efficiently is something that Positron really helps effectively.
Can I just step in here for just a second? Because Nate said table stakes. Lance is talking about hospitality. We've got Pierre talking about a more cost-effective solution for connectivity. And what it's making me think around is this technology is going to become table stakes. I don't know how far in the future. And you do have a lot of talk right now about multifamily moving more towards a hospitality model and creating that B2C relationship. And so my question around this connectivity piece is, does it at some point, managed Wi-Fi included, become just like it is in hospitality? Like, I don't pay for internet when I check into my Hilton anymore. I think I would be appalled if I had to. I mean, is this all heading towards, having that more hospitality-like experience for tenants in multifamily?
Yeah, I think there's no question that it is, Chris. The truth is, you'd be appalled if you went to that property and didn't have managed Wi-Fi. You just wouldn't stay there. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Ultimately, yes. The reality is what we experienced during the pandemic opened a lot of eyes to the need for productivity in an apartment living setting, right? Productivity from the ability to work from home. You needed the ability to lean on kind of a managed Wi-Fi experience more effectively. But what's really happening is managed Wi-Fi is becoming a source to supporting the evolution of IoT technologies. So when you look at things like smart building, when you look at things like, there's a lot of technology that's being introduced into multifamily that doesn't exist there today, but will exist. And the backbone for that technology is certainly going to be Wi-Fi at some level, because it's the most efficient way of providing the connectivity that brings it all together. So I think there will be no question that in the coming years, managed Wi-Fi in this environment will become table stakes. And there's a lot to learn in this industry from the hospitality industry, because the hospitality industry has set the bar. The standards are in place, and you're going to manage against those standards that are already there. And those are the kinds of standards that ultimately need to be brought into multifamily to be able to support the advent of what will inevitably be a solution that you won't stay there in that environment if you don't have a good, strong managed Wi-Fi solution. So
if I could add, Lance, it's a lot about also the user experience. So today people are trying to figure out that if they have this condo unit with a mezzanine, they may need 2 access points. They move from their living room to the upstairs bedrooms in their work area. Seamless connectivity happens and everyone is happy. Now, what you want to be able to do is, as you leave your apartment and go into a common area, pool, gym, maybe there's a shared working space for people that have cabin fever in the studio apartment. You want to maintain the same experience as if you were moving to this expanded apartment basically. And so it's the hospitality experience plus, because you want the same way as you move about the enterprise, and you want the same security, the same privacy as you move about. So that's where some of the Wi-Fi elements are. Go from coordinated Wi-Fi, which is step number one, to have the seamless, secure, controlled mobility of your devices, your family members moving about the property as if they were still in your, call it, Wi-Fi bubble.
Well, and I think that's particularly important for managed Wi-Fi, is that ubiquitous network across the property. Unlike bulk, managed Wi-Fi is going to enable Wi-Fi calling, and I come from a telecom background, and so like I don't see, like I've had many people try to sell me a DAS system, a distributed antenna system, a cellular system for multifamily. There is like basically zero appetite for that. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have managed Wi-Fi, as the 5G build out increases and development increases, you're blocking all that cell signal going into the building, or it's not getting in. And so, I mean, that piece of managed Wi-Fi that enables Wi-Fi calling that across the property is, I think, a huge thing.
I wouldn't say there's zero appetite, Chris. The truth is, you're right. There is certainly a shift towards the need for managed Wi-Fi, but we all live on our cell phones, and there are some of these properties that just don't have adequate cell coverage today. I think it's essential that they have. Look, you wouldn't stay in an apartment building if you couldn't use your cell phone, even if they had managed Wi-Fi. So DAS still plays a role in some of these buildings that are underserved from a connectivity perspective, but there's no question it's moving towards a more managed platform.
Yeah, I misspoke. It's not zero interest, but it is low.
I do think there's kind of an opportunity also with some of these different models to kind of offload cellular data onto Wi-Fi networks. We've seen, I think, some good appetite with that as well. But I think this also is kind of a nice segue into another topic I would like to make sure we tackle, which is that of kind of, you know, business models and that of kind of the considerations that companies are making for these investments into the smart technologies. And actually, I'm curious to see kind of at Point Central, kind of where are you seeing people go with some of these investments? Kind of what are they looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when we think about what they're looking for, the question is sort of what specific solutions, like pieces of technology or point solutions are they looking for? I think it's a lot of this is building dependent. Has something happened at that particular building? Has that operator had some issues with leaks across a variety of their portfolio? But I think you had talked about business models. So I mean, we kind of actually tie it back to that. You know, we in particular operate a 100% channel model and provide our technology through local and national service providers or integrators. What we think that does is that provides for additional flexibility for service offerings and a local presence. I think it was Michelle that had mentioned in her closing remarks that the strongest partnerships for Toll Brothers are those that are local to the community, that will show up and understand, help with training and things like that. And so, you know, you see a variety of different offerings when it comes to not just saying, hey, do you want access control? Do you want access control? Do you want video doorbells? Do you want to include leak detection and water shutoff? But you can go beyond that, and we start to see evolving business models. It's not like this is I'd say most common, but we've started to see examples of concierge type services where you can kind of layer in some of the training, not just base training, but ongoing training of staff, of even residents. You could imagine things like HVAC analytics monitoring, like at a concierge level, where you take that off of the property or the property staff. In a way, it actually supplements the concept of centralization just through a service provider partner. So we're seeing, again, that evolving a little bit as we go, where Michelle talked a lot about this, just the importance of learning and development, making sure that you're designing with that end user in mind. The reality is technology is hard. Technology will have a problem at some point. Something will go down, whether it's the cell network or the Wi-Fi network. There will be a reset that might need to happen, and sometimes it's a good old-fashioned local fix that makes it easy, or the education of how to fix something quickly that can help with that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think absolutely. So kind of lots of different considerations there, lots of different kind of different ways to tackle that as well. So we had a couple of questions come in from the audience that I'd like to make sure that we have a chance to tackle. And kind of on this same topic of business models, I believe Elizabeth mentioned a little bit earlier in the day that there had been some potential regulatory news here in the United States market. I'm sure we've all heard about the FCC potentially taking away bulk internet. That would, of course, impact, I think, a lot of people's different ways of actually financing kind of smart technology transformation and so on and so forth. So I'm curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are here. We do know that there are a number of other markets internationally where they don't really have kind of this bulk model at any rate. So actually, Pierre, kind of curious to hear your take.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see a dry topic such as bulk internet becoming hot news just almost in the last week or so. As we look at bulk internet, in what we've seen in Europe is that there's been something called open access for the 20-some years now, first with DSL and now increasingly with fiber. And it's basically that the building owner, just like here in the US, owns whatever wiring, fiber, cable, whatever, inside the building, and then anyone can access that. And it has to be open access. But there are still some rules. It's not just the free-for-all. There tends to be one physical connectivity provider to the building, and other service providers can lease access to the fiber or whatever it is that could be fixed wireless, provides connectivity to the building, and then they go and connect to the customers over the in-building wiring, or some may even pull extra wiring, which is not a good idea. But then if you have this multitude of providers inside the building, that could potentially break managed Wi-Fi. Because now what we see is a hodgepodge of people with their residential gateways that are totally uncontrolled, and it makes things extremely complex. So it almost means that as that gets opened up, one way or another, even if bulk stays there, the managed Wi-Fi needs to be almost seen as an integral part of the building infrastructure, not something that the service provider or the operator needs to provide and manage. So we're seeing that. I think that is about to change. It's not there yet, but that is definitely part of the equation, because then that's the backbone for all of the IoT, all of these sensors integration and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was actually last week at Advocate in DC, and I talked with NMHC and some other folks about the FCC proposed rulemaking, and then I've continued those conversations over the past week. And honestly, the lack of concern over the rule is kind of shocking. I just reached out to somebody this morning, and I'm like, this is surprising me. But there is, I mean, one of the outtakes of last week is that there is going to be a lot of regulation coming leading up to the election. So, I mean, in multifamily. So I think, we all need to be prepared. And I think we need to, again, refine our messaging around why the technology is important, because and maybe I was talking to an attorney the other day, who does handles PropTech for multifamily. And he's like, well, it's going to, this new proposed rulemaking is going to be from the FCC is going to require that owner operators reduce how much money they're making on managed Wi-Fi. Because you're going to have a compelling reason why the tenant wants to get on that network, if they can, if they have the opportunity to opt out. So I think there's, a lot of moving pieces around regulation, but that the particular FCC rules making, there does seem to be, there are people on Capitol Hill lobbying against it clearly, but the consensus seems to be that it's going to happen. It's just, how do we work with it?
And part of the answer is don't prevent bulk agreements, but allow tenants, residents to opt out of
Yes,
the bulk.
exactly.
And that will probably save the bulk when it's needed for in some properties that are it's only a way to make it viable.
Or Pierre, I might add,
Yeah.
upgrade, right? It's opt out
Yeah.
or upgrade. If they have the ability, and that's the challenge with a lot of these bulk agreements, is there's no scalability in there. And so the residents have different needs across the board. And if you design the managed Wi-Fi in a way that there's upgrade path for those who want more, and there's still the security elements that protect all of those in there, in creating personal area networks and otherwise there, I think there's enough value there that they don't need to find something else. And that's typically what they're looking for, is they're just simply looking for more than what they have access to.
And pricing that is based on the market. They don't need it cheaper necessarily. It just has to be on par with the market.
Well, and I think what you get with managed Wi-Fi, back to Nate's point earlier, is you get that ongoing support and training that you're not going to get with one of the major carriers. And I've spoken with the major carriers about their customer service. So, I mean, I think that that's one of the, there are these tenant facing aspects that we need to address more clearly when we're talking about connectivity. It is a huge, I've been preaching this since 2015. The connectivity has to be there first. But yeah, as we've all said, like MDU is slowly coming around to that.
I may have a slightly different, I wouldn't say different take on this, but I come at it from a different perspective, simply because Point Central doesn't require Wi-Fi connectivity to provide our solution. Certainly some of our stuff would need broadband connectivity for like our video solutions and video doorbells, but we run dual path connectivity, and so even in the absence of internet at all or broadband connectivity, we can still connect, and at low data throughput, since that's how we were really built from the beginning. But I think that what's interesting about this is that that's major news, and it's interesting to hear you say, Chris, that the rumblings were there's more to come. Like, certainly this is a very interesting, maybe not surprising time to hear such a big announcement 8 months before a general presidential election. But it seems like there's still quite a bit in flux. What I think, though, is regardless of which direction it ends up going, or what maybe some of those compromises, Pierre and Lance, that you talked about, we could propose as a nice middle ground solution for opt-out or whatever. I think that it's a dangerous precedent for other technology providers. Like, this is coming from the FCC, so this is pretty largely focused on broadband. But you could envision, if this thing passes, like it maybe creates a disincentive for other types of property technologies to make big investments into the space, if all that's going to happen is we're cutting out any ability to generate revenue, or give a property manager an opportunity to generate revenue in that NOI, that portion of the NOI equation. So I also tie this back, though, to that original point that I made, and Chris, you talked about, right now is not the environment to try to increase rent or add a fee. But if my guidance would be, if you were looking at any technology, whether it's managed Wi-Fi, it's access, and it is wholly predicated on the idea of the margin you're going to get above your cost, we should be very careful. I mean, the reality is this is going to be a forever dance. We're talking about being in the residential real estate world. There's investors and owners, and there's regulators, and it's always going to be, oh, you're making too much money off of something. So, I think that there's a target on this back. The reality is, I don't personally know who this legislation is like really targeted at. Every bit of anecdotal information I have is that the residents want and love the experience of bulk or managed Wi-Fi, and the vast majority of them get it for cheaper than retail. Lance, you made a good point. Like, it's the inflexibility, but they usually get it cheaper.
Yeah, well, that was always our guidance, was if you're going to put in managed Wi-Fi and the carriers are charging X number of dollars a month, you go in $10 below that. Yeah. But yeah, there is, I mean, you saw what happened in Colorado last year, and everybody's afraid that's going to spread. So I think there is definitely some caution. Like, that's why one of the reasons I've been saying it, and you agreed with me, is it can't be about revenue. It can't be at least solely about revenue. It has to be about tenant retention. It has to be about, operational efficiencies. It has to be about energy savings. It has to be, you name it. There's got to be a use case there that's not, I want to make $5 a month extra on a unit.
Yes, I think thankfully we are seeing a lot of companies kind of move in this direction around kind of centralizing data and actually making it so they can analyze kind of financially the impact of these investments and actually come up with those hard numbers.
Yeah, I have been pitched single pane of glass about 10 times now in the past 3 months.
Yes, a lot of demand, even if I do believe it's going to be harder than a lot of folks think.
Yeah.
So we do have a couple of questions in from the audience that I'd definitely like to tackle. So first question in, so asking, let's see, we have a question kind of talking about, we have so many questions. One of the audience members is saying that they see Wi-Fi as a really great solution for new construction, but they think that cellular is going to be kind of more efficient for retrofitting existing assets. So they want to kind of know your take on that and kind of where you see cellular kind of with regards to retrofits.
I mean, it's definitely more efficient than putting in managed Wi-Fi, but I mean, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? I mean, if you're trying to accomplish making cell phones work in the building, then yes, you need cellular. You might want to look at a DAS solution. I think in new dev, and there's a supplier that I know well who is most of their new dev that they're doing is managed Wi-Fi and a cellular DAS, just covering all bases. But there is, but I don't think, I know T-Mobile and Verizon really want to sell me Wi-Fi over 5G. I'm not going to do that.
5G has a lot of coverage issues inside buildings, older ones, right? So that's
exactly
that's about to change. Going in a retrofit and trying to install a DAS, that's really complex and expensive. And you spoke earlier, Chris, about Wi-Fi offload. And to some extent, the 5G networks are built on the expectation that when you are at your home, you primarily use your Wi-Fi connection. Although you're doing a voice call, you're sending text, it all goes over the Wi-Fi through the fixed network and eventually to the mobile network. So you're not using capacity in a static way when you're sitting in front of your TV or whatever. And to try to cover a whole MDU with only 5G, well, T-Mobile and Verizon have tried to do this, and early on they managed to get a lot of customers. In 23, they had over 80% of the new customer ad were over these fixed 5G networks, but 6 months later they churned like crazy. So
yeah, I mean,
it's not a long-term solution.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be solved for before DAS becomes really prevalent in multifamily. I mean, because the carriers have zero interest in funding these things because they don't have enough it's not enough users, in a location for them to, that ship sailed years ago. So I think, if we're going to move towards a cellular solution, that there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had around how you're going to get that carrier signal in the building. And so like there are booster solutions out there. There's one I love. There's only one I like that do solve for it without putting in, a cellular signal source, oh my gosh, my mind is leading me right now, but the signal source in the MDF. I keep my eye on it all the time. And whoever asked that question, if you want to email me on the side, I will be happy to answer you. I'll be happy to talk to you.
I think in kind of my perspective, for maybe garden style properties, having cellular modules inside of kind of devices that are maybe outdoors or maybe kind of in an area where you can actually very easily penetrate the walls will work pretty well. But kind of as Chris is saying, Pierre is saying, kind of some of those denser buildings, mid-rises, high-rises, anything with kind of thick concrete walls and a lot of metal, it's not going to work so well. So it really just, it depends fundamentally on the kind of building that you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the New York Times had an article, has to be at least 10 years ago now, about putting DAS systems into high-rise buildings, like how it was just required for multifamily in a high-rise to have a DAS system because nobody would rent otherwise, because they all check their phones.
Well, there's two types of DAS, Chris, and one is an emergency response system that is
Yep.
required. Right, it's
Those are required. Yeah.
above 3 stories, and then there's cellular amplification. But
Yeah.
I echo that. Of course, it is. There are some economic advantages of cellular over Wi-Fi in existing, but it really boils down to what you're trying to accomplish and whether that's the right direction or not.
Yeah, I'll go back to just my little bit of adding here is like so much. This is building by building dependent or community by community. The difference between a high rise, a mid rise, and a garden style are like, there's almost 3 different categories of industries that you're.
Yeah, especially garden style is its own beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. We have another question in from the audience saying Massachusetts is funding a rewire updates to subsidized housing projects, but wants Cat 6 and fiber. Kind of asking about this perception from government entities that this is kind of really what's needed.
Well, they're both great technologies. Cat 6 and fiber will deliver great bandwidth. The question is, what is the impact to the building, the disruption it's causing? Is it really needed? I think that's a fundamental question. There are better ways to use those dollars to provide connectivity into these buildings. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add, but.
No, I mean, I think when you're talking about especially for affordable housing, that it's one of the things we were lobbying about last week, but I mean, it's actually at Greystar, their affordable housing that they started, they were doing managed Wi-Fi and smart home in those properties. And then everything was included in rent. But, I just totally forgot what I was going to say. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I went right out of my head. I apologize.
In case,
I was going to say, I know. I was going to say in affordable housing, there's a lot of thinking that has to be done in order. We're underserving those communities if we can't find an affordable way to provide Wi-Fi for them, whether it be managed or bulk or whatever. And we're, those people that are going into those affordable housing communities got 100 problems. One of them shouldn't be Wi-Fi.
Yes, agreed. So another question this one is asking, do you see an appetite from building owners and managers and operators to have smart app offerings that tie into the access control system, kind of both for residents and for staff?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely app fatigue out there. You want to integrate as much as possible, but you want to make sure that whoever's doing those integrations is really doing them properly. I mean, I've run across firms that integrated with 50, 100 things, and it turned out like those integrations were all awful because they didn't pick who to integrate with in any kind of like strategic fashion. But yes, there's definitely a drive towards having like, from the tenant side, you don't want it. And from the property staff side, you don't want the property staff having to log into 10 different systems to operate.
Amen.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I like that. I mean, the phrase app fatigue is absolutely right. The disparate point solutions. I mean, if I were to kind of take this as like, what's the suggestion or recommendation back, it's wherever possible, try to think about the big picture. Don't rush into a point solution. Even if you had that, that leak last month and your boss is on you about, we got to find something to help us with leak prevention or early detection. Maybe take that opportunity to think about the IoT more broadly. Like what else might you want? Take the deep breath. I think Michelle also mentioned taking several months sometimes to vet multiple different providers in just one device category. We take an approach of a curated ecosystem, not saying that you can't integrate things at a service provider or an integrator level. But the reality is we know from experience that not all protocols are created equally, and even within a given protocol for IoT devices, not all of them device manufacturers implement them equally. And so sometimes if you look at just a consideration for the tech vendor, consider just how many devices they say they support or do support. Mm-hmm. More is harder. And wherever possible, if you can find a provider who integrates multiple devices directly, it becomes easier to troubleshoot, easier to keep online, and just more sort of systematic across your portfolio would be my 2 cents there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that DIY, unless you have a CTO that really knows all the technology, probably not your best idea. Engaging with point solutions, I totally agree with you. You're preaching to the choir. You really do need a strategy. What are you trying to solve for today? What are you going to try to solve for next year? What are you going to try to solve for the year after that? And so it's best to, work with providers that are going to grow with you. There are some clients out there that have situations where they're going to be like, I want it all. But that is not generally the case. I would love to have all clients like that, but it's not. I agree, Nate. You got to think big picture.
All right. I think. Thank you all so very much for joining us here today. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, but that was a wonderful discussion. Really diving into a lot of topics I think that are very, very important to the industry right now.
Thanks for having
us, Kristen. Wish we had more time.
Yes, that's always the case. But yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right. So yes. Well, we are out of time for today's event. We do have a series of different additional events throughout the year. So come back July 23rd for our next virtual event, looking at smart living, attracting and retaining residents. We are going to be back in person September 24th to 25th here in Dallas. So hoping to see you there. In December 12th, we are also going to be having another virtual event looking at smart spaces, access control, and security in multifamily. So in addition to our Smart Spaces conference series, Parks Associates host a wide number of executive conferences and virtual events, ranging from our Connection Summit that we hold in person every year to our Smart Energy Summit, Connections kind of home conference, our Connected House Summit, as well as Future of Video, which we had a little bit earlier today. If you are interested in different sponsorship opportunities, including for our events or in any of our research or even at speaking at our events, these are the folks to reach out to. Thank you all so very much for attending. I hope to see you again soon.
Working in emerging tech and connected services is exciting but tough. You are working in an innovative, dynamic market with few clear models of success to follow. You need to make decisions more quickly than ever. There's more information and opinions out there from more sources than ever. Staffing is short, resources are constrained. At Parks Associates, it is our mission to serve the industry with evidence-based insights. We exist to serve you, and we can help. We inform your strategy with diverse perspectives so you see the whole picture. We research industry movement, the trends that matter, the shifting competitive landscape, and product innovations that will change the market. We also bring you the voice of the consumer. We survey tens of thousands of U.S. households every year with a data set that trends over decades, curating it for a deep understanding of consumer perspectives on emerging consumer technologies and services. We also bring you the voice of the channel. We survey and interview security dealers, small businesses, builders, property managers, and others to understand the channel and business customers' point of view. And your voice is so important. The experience and knowledge of the executives leading the industry are so valuable. You are in the trenches, and you can learn from each other. We bring the decision makers together in our executive conferences to make impactful connections, talk candidly about industry challenges, and inspire new solutions. We invite you to be our partner. You can learn with us through our research subscriptions. You can get custom data cuts quickly for product development, marketing decisions, and press releases. You can make inquiries of our analyst team when you want an outside opinion. You can assess new market opportunities and business concepts through custom research projects. You can host learning sessions for your team with our analyst workshops. You can add your voice to the conversation by joining us at our executive events. And you can help other industry leaders learn about you through our white papers and webinars. We are here to serve you. Be our partner.